Alaska is warming. This is a permafrost risk application. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction's number 4 essential for making cities resilient is invest in and maintain critical infrastructure that reduces risk, such as flood drainage, adjusted where needed to cope with climate change. This app identifies the risk to infrastructure, and the hope is that awareness will empower local Alaskans. Over the last 50 years, Alaska has warmed twice as fast as the national average. Warming air and ground temperatures, permafrost melting, and changes in the freeze-thaw patterns of the soil is affecting infrastructure. Permafrost, or soil that has been frozen more than 2 consecutive years, degrades at temperatures above freezing. Degrading permafrost changes the surface hydrology, saturates, and can kill boreal forests, among other effects. An estimated 14% of Alaskans live in areas sensitive to permafrost degradation. Some Alaskan communities rely on a single road or airstrip for their survival. Alaska is already feeling the effects of warming on infrastructure. With changes in the permafrost layer and active topsoil layer comes land that shrinks and changes, which causes infrastructure buckling. This app provides an infrastructure risk rating by analyzing modeled ground temperature data and modeled data of the thickness of the soil layer on top of the permafrost layer, all over a period of nearly 90 years. A user is also able to swipe the temperature layers across those 90 years to view an aggressive change in ground temperature. The view is pretty dramatic. The application components are: the backend uses the Amazon Web Services Elastic Compute Cloud instance. The Elastic Compute Cloud instance was created using ArcGIS for Server 10.2, the Windows-based Amazon machine image. IIS Web Server was enabled on the AWS server to host the web application. ArcGIS for Server Advanced Enterprise 10.2.2 was configured to host raster-related map services and geoprocessing service. Whenever possible, all other data was published using ArcGIS Online for organizations. The web application is published and shared publicly using AGO. AGO Web Map published in AGO includes the following data. Mean average ground temperature raster layers were published as individual map services using ArcGIS for Server. Reference vector data for Alaska infrastructure was published in AGO. A custom geoprocessing service was hosted in the Amazon Web Service ArcGIS for Server instance that computes risk. Prior to the risk calculation, the spatial analyst extension was used in preparation of the data to calculate the active layer thickness change over time. The web application was created using ArcGIS Web App Builder Beta 2.0. Custom widgets were created, including one widget that uses the current location to compute risk and a slider tool that allows risk to be viewed through time. A second widget allows the user to click on the map to determine the location to compute risk. The user can choose to share the application using Twitter. The application was styled to be viewable on a mobile device such as a smartphone using the ArcGIS Web App Builder tools. The application hosted on the Amazon Web Service EC2 cloud server is accessible at this URL. This application is also published and shared on AGO with code, and a GitHub repository was established for the application. Now I'll go into the risk application. The colorful layers you see here are average ground temperatures for the period 2010 through 2099. You can swipe these layers to view an aggressive change in ground temperature as predicted over the next 90 years. A user can also click anywhere in Alaska to receive an infrastructure risk rating. Click on the finger, and then click on the map. In this instance, the risk is a medium risk. Active degradation and permafrost will begin in the near term, begin mitigating for effects now, meaning there is time to plan for effects to infrastructure, so mitigation can be done to minimize the impacts. We also provide some climate change resources: the State of Alaska Climate Change in Alaska website, the University of Alaska Fairbanks Permafrost Laboratory, the Federal Highway Authority Administration page on climate change and transportation, and the Snow and Ice Data Center. The ground temperature data is categorized into no permafrost, permafrost degradation, and permafrost loss. If, for example, current conditions show an intact permafrost layer, but the 29 data shows permafrost loss, we can assume that the potential that infrastructure will be affected is pretty great. The active layer is a layer of soil on top of the permafrost. If increases of 50% or more predicted, the risk to infrastructure is also great. Vector data is also included to identify critical infrastructure in the areas with increased warming where rebuilding, repairing, or rerouting infrastructure may be necessary. Here from the layers menu, you can see populated places, and then the infrastructure includes airstrips, ferry ports, power lines, telephone lines, railroads, roads, both major and secondary, pipelines, and fiber optic cables. You can also choose which Esri base map to display. And lastly, there is the option to share this on Twitter. You can also zoom in and out to get a better view of the data. Here's Anchorage. All of the data in this app was freely available upon request. The infrastructure data was downloaded from the Alaska State Geospatial Clearinghouse, and the permafrost prediction data was generously provided by Sergei Marchenko of the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute. He also provided the active layer thickness data. The Esri widget to change the base map again is here, as well to turn on and off the infrastructure data, and then again, a permafrost risk rating. Where I just clicked, there is no risk. You can see it's warm already in 2010. So current conditions show that there is no permafrost here. The application of this tool is to assist the citizens of Alaska to take ownership and responsibility in their communities. This tool allows anyone to see the data so they can begin to be aware of the potential disastrous impacts of climate change in Alaska. By empowering citizens, we empower communities. By empowering communities, we can motivate policy makers to act. My hope is that the use of this app will grow. We have utilized ArcGIS Online to be sure that access in rural communities via smart devices was possible. We have made the application fully open source document, utilizing GitHub to track changes and allow users to duplicate or add to this app. We think this is a start to an app that can gain functionality over time. For example, additional disaster data, including earthquake faults and tsunami inundation areas, can be added to assess additional infrastructure risks due to these events, to mitigate hazards to our fragile ecosystems, and to identify at-risk areas where early warning systems may be needed. Thank you.